Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you tonight. We have exciting hemp news, a short little hemp news segment this evening, and our guest tonight is Kimmi del Prado, who is in the Philippines with Sensible Philippines, also working for medical marijuana patients in the Philippines. We'll be interviewing her here shortly, but first we'll bring on our infamous dancing, Cannabis Leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first story tonight is from the nation's capital. U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced at a press conference last Friday that he intends to formally introduce the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act in April, probably on April 20th, knowing him. The forthcoming legislation, which was released in draft form last July, repeals federal marijuana prohibition by removing cannabis from the U.S. Controlled Substances Act. Speaking at the event, Senator Schumer said, quote, "In the coming weeks, we're ramping up our outreach and we expect to introduce final legislation. Our goal is to do it in April. Then we begin the nationwide push spearheaded by New York to get the federal law done. As the majority leader, I can set the priorities, and this is a priority for me," end quote. We are enthusiastic that the senator is moving forward on his promise to prioritize cannabis policy reform in the 117th Congress. It's our hope that the official introduction of the CAOA jumpstarts hearings and debates in the upper chamber, debates that are long overdue. In the past month, Senate leadership has received criticism from both the slow rollout of the legalization bill and for failing to support efforts to enact more incremental federal legislation, such as the Safe Banking Act, which has been passed multiple times by the U.S. House of Representatives. As initially drafted, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act directs the U.S. Attorney General to remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, thereby allowing states to either maintain or establish their own cannabis regulatory policies free from undue federal interference. Under this scheme, state governments, if they choose to do so, can continue to impose criminal penalties for marijuana possession offenses. However, states would not be permitted to prohibit the interstate commerce of legal cannabis products transported through their borders. The proposal also mandates the expungement of records for anyone convicted of a federal nonviolent marijuana offense. The expungements must take place within 1 year of the law's enactment. The act also forbids federal officials from taking discriminatory actions against those who legally use cannabis. It prohibits individuals from being denied any federal public benefit on the basis of the use or possession of cannabis. It also, for the first time, permits physicians associated with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to make recommendations to their patients to access medical cannabis. The proposal transfers primary agency jurisdiction over cannabis regulation from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration to the Food and Drug Administration and to the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, in manner similar to the ways in which these agencies already oversee alcohol and tobacco products. A federal excise tax of 10% would be imposed within the first year of the law's enactment. Medical cannabis access programs, which are operational in the majority of U.S. states, would not be disrupted under this federal plan. The proposed Senate plan is competing against two other House bills, the MORE Act and the State Reform Act, both of which also seek to deschedule cannabis at the federal level. The MORE Act was previously advanced by the U.S. House of Representatives in the 116th Congress last year and is expected to be taken up again by House lawmakers in the coming weeks. In Utah, lawmakers in the Utah House and Senate have overwhelmingly approved legislation, Senate Bill 46, protecting state employees from being sanctioned in the workplace for their off-the-job use of medical cannabis. Members of the Senate passed the measure by a vote of 26-1. House members in Salt Lake City advanced the measure 68-4 and now awaits action from Republican Governor Spencer Cox. If enacted, the bill would limit state employers from taking punitive actions against employees who consume cannabis products at home in compliance with the state's medical marijuana access law. The legislation does not extend protections to those who work for private employers, nor does it allow for employees to come to work under the influence of marijuana. The measure also forbids judges and juries from discriminating against the medical cannabis patient in the course of a judicial proceeding. Utah lawmakers enacted legislation permitting for the limited use and distribution of cannabis and cannabis products in 2018. Unlike the laws in the majority of medical marijuana access states, it did not provide any explicit workplace protections for patients. In recent years, lawmakers in several states, such as New York and Nevada, and municipalities such as Atlanta and Philadelphia, have passed laws limiting the ability of employers to either refuse to hire or to fire employees solely on the basis of their off-the-job consumption of cannabis. Last month, justices on the New Hampshire State Supreme Court ruled that a private employer cannot fire a worker solely based upon a drug test failure for their medical cannabis consumption. Our last story tonight comes from the South in Mississippi. Legislation became law last week allowing for qualified patients to obtain medical cannabis products from licensed providers in the state of Mississippi. Senate Bill 2095, the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act, regulates the production and distribution of cannabis flowers and concentrates to patients with cancer, refractory pain, post-traumatic stress, spinal cord diseases, and other qualifying ailments. It's the 37th state to legalize medical cannabis access. Marijuana access is long overdue for Mississippi patients. The overwhelming majority of voters decided in favor of this policy change over a year ago, and for the past 14 months, the will of the people has been denied. In November 2020, Mississippi voters decided between two separate ballot measures that sought to legalize medical cannabis access, one promoted by local activists and another more restrictive measure placed on the ballot by lawmakers. 73% of the voters decided in favor of the Citizens Initiative. However, Republican lawmakers later challenged the legitimacy of the state voter initiative process. Members of the Supreme Court ultimately upheld that challenge, a decision that nullified the 2020 vote and also prohibits citizens from placing future measures on the ballot in Mississippi. Hopefully that will change. That's the end of our hemp news segment for tonight. I want to remind you, if you are a loved one, need a doctor anywhere from Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington, California to Mississippi, New York, Florida, we have a physician referral service. Just call us at 503-235-4606. If you have any questions about marijuana or medical marijuana, call us at 503-235-4606. Now we have Kimmi del Prado in the Philippines talking about medical cannabis and cannabis legalization there in the archipelago of the Philippines. So stay tuned and remember, help us restore hemp. Good night.
I would like to introduce Kimmi del Prado, who is in the Philippines, and she's from an organization called Sensible Philippines and the Medical Cannabis Party of Philippines. Welcome to the show, Kimmi.
Thank you, Paul. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I was very fascinated to hear about your activism in the Philippines. Many of us have heard about President Duarte and his campaign to kill drug users in the Philippines. I don't know if that includes cannabis users or if it's mainly focuses on methamphetamine and other pharmaceutical drugs. Do the police assassinate cannabis users in the Philippines?
Actually, as a matter of fact, yes. Cannabis users weren't spared from the drug war. People, the focus was not really, the focus was on meth because that's rampant. But that doesn't mean that cannabis users are excluded. So pretty much, but I did start at the time before him. I started my activism in 2013, and everything changed when he came into office in 2016. Everything changed, and coming from us, like So I started as a medical cannabis advocate. I mean, in the Philippines, I was lucky that at that time that I started my activism, that it was the first time the local media picked up on the issue. And thanks to the CNN documentary of Dr. Sanjay Gupta, if Colorado had Charlotte Fiji as the poster child, we had a patient like her here in the Philippines, and her name was Moon Jaden. And if it weren't for that documentary, other parents wouldn't realize that cannabis could be a potential medicine for their children. So yeah, so that story sparked the movement in the Philippines. I mean, there are activists way before, but not as organized as what happened there. So with that, it became like a necessity to advocate for it. And I'm really lucky, and I take pride in being one of the pioneer activists who got involved in the medical cannabis movement. So unlike Charlotte Fiji, we lost Moon Jaden in 2013, and her death became significant.
Charlotte passed away too.
Yeah, she did. I think last year or 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Recently.
So, but her story kind of inspired a lot of parents. And when I say parents, these are your typical. They're like your Monday to Friday work and Saturday Sunday family time, and they don't drink, they don't smoke cigarettes. So they were at their desperation that they found out about cannabis. So it kind of made them like a complete turn to what they thought what cannabis was. So imagine and the parents back then, that's all they wanted. All they wanted was to have access for their kids because of what they saw, how cannabis helped Charlotte Fiji back then. So what I did was, see, I got into cannabis. I didn't start like I knew I was gonna be an advocate, or I was an activist. I just started out as it was an interest, it was a passion, because my curiosity dated way back in college. Because I've never seen any plant as controversial as cannabis. So it really got me more interested. What's the big deal? And only until I saw the CNN documentary that I found out that, yeah, okay, so it is really medicine. And that's the time I started researching on Rick Simpson and all that.
You know what? I just have to throw this in here.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interaction with Sanjay Gupta in 2009. He wrote an editorial in Time magazine called "Why I Will Vote No on Medical Marijuana."
Yeah, that was featured there.
So in May and June of that year, I was contacted by CNN to appear on Anderson Cooper's 360 show, and they were doing a week-long focus on cannabis. And so I told Anderson Cooper's show that I wanted to debate Sanjay Gupta because he was wrong about marijuana. And so a guy who works on that show, named Joe John, says, well, why do you think he's wrong? And I said, well, there's thousands of medical journal articles that show that cannabis has medical efficacy for a wide variety of conditions, including neurological conditions, knowing that Gupta was a neurosurgeon. So I pulled those over to Joe Johns. And while I did not get the opportunity to debate Gupta directly, he came on right after my segment, and Anderson Cooper asked him, so this man in Oregon says marijuana is medicine. Is he right? And Gupta completely flipped and said, yes, he is. And started saying, he read the journal articles that I sent him the links to, or at least some of them. And so I can righteously say that I flipped Sanjay Gupta from the dark side, and his
so it was you.
5 different weeds specials, the most recent one focusing just last month on cannabis and autism.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that that's had an effect internationally as well. I didn't know that
Oh,
it,
I see. I
it
see.
impacted the Philippines. English is one of the accepted languages in the Philippines, right?
Yeah, actually, we're known in the whole Southeast Asia, I think, of having the best English comprehension. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's something to be proud of, but yeah, we do speak English like. I'm sorry.
Oh, it is something to be proud of. Any recognition or of any language, I think, is a something to be proud of.
It kind of has become our second language in the Philippines. Like it's common to speak speak good English because I don't know, we were taught in school and we see it, and we are colonized by the Americans for a long time. So
Yeah.
we pretty much adopted a lot of American stuff. Anyway, so you probably so you were a driving force in Dr. Sanjay Gupta's flipping over to the other side.
Yeah, I had clinics. I still help medical marijuana patients and work with doctors helping medical marijuana patients get medical marijuana authorizations. So I still do that, and I
Yeah.
doing it back then as well. I started in 1999, and so far we've helped about 270,000 Americans in 9 different states and 60 different cities, working with 40 different doctors at THCF medical clinics. But our business is
Amazing.
days, but we're still here.
Amazing. So yeah, so that story. So now I know that's a part of that's another interesting turn in my activism is meeting you, that you had an influence in what gave birth to the advocacy here in the Philippines. So imagine we have. I mean, we are a Catholic country. We are religious. We are conservative,
Yeah,
and seeing.
the history of the Philippines, they were colonized by the Spanish, but then
Yeah.
America took over the Philippines in a very bloody, horrible, genocidal war, the Spanish-American War that played out there in the Philippines when it became kind of a territory or colony of the United States. I think it was like 1898 or 1899 in that period.
We have a long history of like I don't know if it has something to do with our lost identity, but we've been colonized for a long time. That we are a product of a lot of cultures combined.
Crossroads of various Asian cultures and Polynesian cultures there. How many different islands make up the Philippines archipelago?
We have 7,000 plus all over. Yeah. So that's an interesting trivia about the Philippines. So we're an archipelago. So we have a lot of islands, but we are mainly divided into 3: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So I happen to be on the Luzon part, and yeah, we do have different dialects, regional dialects.
So is
But we
the dialect the language you're talking about with dialects?
Yes, Tagalog is one. That's my native language, and then there's a lot of different dialects.
Is Manila in the Luzon district?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. So Luzon is
I-
obviously the most influential one with the capital and the largest
It
city.
is. It is, and actually, even when we started the advocacy, it was centered in Manila. It was centered. I'm 2 hours away from Manila, but yeah, but it's accessible anyway. So yeah, so pretty much most of the action happens in Manila, and it's just recently that other regions are being featured because there's more to the Philippines than Manila. So yeah, if you mention the Philippines, it's always it's Manila, it's the traffic, it's that. But then we also have the southern part of the Philippines. We have a lot of beaches and everything. So we have a rich culture, and sadly, we don't have any written record of cannabis use. But it's I mean, I grew up, even up until now, I grew up seeing news report of large plantation cannabis plants being uprooted And now that looking back, all the years that I've seen it, and it's still happening right now, probably instead of like uprooting or destroying the crops, I think it's high time that we consider, why don't we let these people grow if it's deeply ingrained in the culture and in tradition. That's something that I want to accomplish, really, is to trace back the history of Filipinos in using plant medicine, particularly cannabis, because in Southeast Asia we are an agricultural region, and before the prohibition came, we were using plant medicines. It's part of our culture. We have herbal healers. As a matter of fact, we have a term called the albulario. Uh, in English, it's like using herbs to cure or to treat, and we use plants that we have in our backyard. So we are more on the preventive side, as compared to Western medicine. When Western medicine reached us, it's when we started like moving away from the culture of like incorporating health, incorporating plants into our diet, vegetables and everything. And then with the colonization and everything, even our diets changed. So my point is, since the prohibition, the Americans heavily influenced the all over the world. Their influence, we were affected by that prohibition, and we were told not to use particular plants. And 50, 60 years later, here they are again telling us, oh, we were wrong. But now we've found out, we researched that, okay, this is how you use your plants. But it still doesn't say anything about our identity, like our relationship with the plant. So, I mean, ideally speaking, we in Southeast Asia, we should like trace back our roots in using plant medicines, because if it weren't for prohibition, probably it would have our relationship with plant medicine would have developed into I don't know, maybe it would have been improved, but because of the prohibition. So anyway, going back to what happened when the first documentary came out from CNN. So that became like the can't say like the Bible, but it became like what happened in Colorado became like something that we would like to happen in the Philippines as well. So the Philippine medical cannabis movement started with heavily focused on children with epilepsy, similar case as Charlotte, Fiji. So that's and you know, it kind of adds more. It kind of adds intensity to the story if you see parents and their kids talking. If you see the parents talking about how difficult it is to see their kids suffer from seizures, when in fact there's a cure, and they saw it elsewhere through the story of Charlotte, Fiji. So so I met most of the parents in. So I was new to online forums and everything back then. This is in 2013. I was actually new to Facebook as well, and I didn't plan on using Facebook seriously. I thought it's just, you know, it's just another thing that you manage online. But Facebook played a very important role in the Philippine medical cannabis history, because well, I started with my interest because since I became a mom, I just got curious if there was anything mothers and marijuana, anything out of curiosity, and then I found out that there's this group called Moms for Marijuana International, and I saw that they had chapters in Malaysia, in Thailand, I think in Singapore. And then I wrote to them and I asked if they have a chapter in the Philippines. I was just curious. Like I said, I didn't intend to advocate for it, or I didn't intend like, oh, I want to like I want to be an advocate or an activist. It was just an interest, because like I said, my interest started way back. Like I was so interested in cannabis and so curious. What's the big deal? It's a plant, and it's the plant is seen in many different cultures, particularly like the most famous is the reggae culture, right? So and then we see references in art and people sing about it, but it was illegal. So the curiosity became more intense because I've never seen any other vice glorified as much as cannabis. So and you know it's positive. You people sing about how you know the good vibes and everything. So I started with that one. And also because when I was younger, of course, I had to experiment with a lot of things, and cannabis was one of it. So so I did a lot of research. My I Since I spend a lot of time online, so I took it as an opportunity to learn a lot, and it just so happened that cannabis was one of my favorite topics. So anyway, going back there, so I was assigned the Philippine chapter in 2013. And I'm not sure if they did it intentionally because after a series of emails from the mother organization, they gave me the Philippine Moms for Marijuana page on April 20th of 2013. I wasn't sure if it's a coincidence.
420.
Yeah, 420. So my task as a chapter leader was to see, was to check on the cannabis community. And back then, I didn't know that there were already like 420 friendly groups in the Philippines. So I saw them online. There's this group called 420 Philippines and Formal. It's like a pattern after normal. But then they were Facebook pages, and you know they're into the culture side and all of that, and a little bit of information. But it was Philippine Moms for Marijuana, the Facebook page, that really helped spark the movement, and it was because of the story of Moon Jaden. So, and another coincidence. So Moon Jaden is MJ, right?
Right.
And then her parents, the name of her parents was Micah and June. MJ again,
Okay.
right? And I am still heavily into the moon and everything. I'm so fascinated. I'm fascinated with two things: marijuana and the moon. So anyway, seeing that in that I don't know, seeing that in that situation, it kind of felt like something like maybe the universe is telling me something. So what I did was since the story came out, so I met a couple of parents in a forum, a growers forum in the Philippines. So I didn't know that there were growers in the Philippines. And when I saw the forum, I saw that the pictures they had there was quality that you see in High Times magazine, and these are pictures that I see only on High Times magazine. So I was fascinated that they have that even if it was illegal, people are growing it and in that sophisticated manner. So I was new to that. And very unlikely that in a growers forum that you see people talking about medical conditions. And it was that one particular thread where I met the couple, Micah and June. The title of the thread is Cannabis, Medical Cannabis Journey. So it was a journey of the first time I heard of someone using cannabis oil in the Philippines. So the person who wrote the thread, he became my friend eventually. He made oil for his father-in-law, and it was a long thread. And on that thread, there were a lot of parents asking about the oil, where to look for seeds. They were looking for seeds because probably they thought that it's easy to plant and easy to take care of, and it's easy to produce oil from. So that's the basic knowledge that they have. But then towards the end of the thread, so the author or the original the person who posted that, he said that it may not have saved his father-in-law, but it prolonged his life. And then, so again, this was at the time that the CNN documentary came out, and I was managing Philippine Moms for Marijuana page. So I got in touch with the parents, and I said, "Can I feature your story on the page?" And maybe what I really wanted at that time, because I was culture shocked at the presence of cannabis online in the Philippines on Facebook. My thinking was that if I put their story out, one way or another, there's going to be someone with a lot of marijuana, with a lot of stash, who would probably approach them and help them acquire or try using cannabis oil. And mind you, this was at the time that cannabis oil was completely new to us. I mean, for most of us. So yeah, it started there. And so Moon Jaden was featured before on the local news because of her Travail Syndrome. So before the whole cannabis thing came out. So what happened was,
let me just jump in here and explain to our viewers that Travail syndrome is a very severe form of epilepsy that causes children in particular to have massive seizures that reorganize their brain where they're unable to function. And sometimes they'll have hundreds of these seizures a day. And so it is a very severe situation, and usually children don't live long with that condition. But cannabis has helped in many different epileptic seizures and stopping those seizures. So that's how cannabis was involved in that. And of course, the fact that children are suffering and their parents are trying to help them is very, very compassionate situation. And all people can feel sorry and feel empathy for the parents and the child in that situation. And so, you know, I certainly didn't plan on highlighting epileptic children, but it turned out to be, we helped many, many epileptic children prior to Charlotte Figuet and in our clinics. And it was something that I became aware of in terms of working with doctors, helping medical patients. But now back to 2013 and getting the and June and them able to find sources to help
them. Well, so going back to the story, so I asked them if I could share their story on the Facebook page, Philippine Moms for Marijuana, because I said it's a good opportunity for people to know that this is not just a U.S. thing. This is not just happening in the U.S. There's also a clamor to have medical cannabis access to medical cannabis here in the Philippines. And it's also a way of like I said earlier, I see a lot of people posting their stash online, and they do have a lot of stash. And I was thinking that someone out there somewhere would probably have the heart to help these couple, because you know, if I mean, I would if I had the resources, but the only way I could help was to use and maximize social media, because it's where everyone was. And again, I was using a different name back then on Facebook, because like I said, I wasn't intending on using it like seriously. I thought it's just it's just another MySpace. But anyway, so I managed to get the permission from June and Micah to make a campaign for Moon Jaden. And what I did was I put out a series of posters, campaign posters, and I called it Hope for Moon Jaden. So what I did was kind of like a way of building a community in which I did. And with that Hope for Moon Jaden campaign, I posted a picture of her, because that's the only way I could help them. Because I was a mom, I am a mom, and seeing how frustrating it is. I mean, to just be a parent is frustrating, but it's completely different if you actually hear stories from parents how they see their child suffer and they can't do anything about it. So, and I was like, cannabis is something that a lot of people are okay with or without, but then there are people who have hope in it, that they want to have access to it because they want to save their child. They want to make they need a cure. They need treatment for their kids. So it started there. And since I posted that her campaign. So it became a series of Hope for Moon Jaden campaigns. So I was constantly updating people online what's happening with Moon Jaden, because she was comatose at that time. And so what I did was I published her photo, names of her parents, how to contact their parents, their bank account, and everything. So it's really of me like facilitating whatever support they can get, because yeah, I really thought it was easy. I really thought it was just one poster. Someone's gonna contact them and say, hey, look, I have cannabis oil here that you might want to try for Moon Jaden. It didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen. It took a while until people picked it up, and and then what happened was, so I was overwhelmed with a lot of comments on her Hope campaign. What I did was, so I put them in one group chat, and I named it the Hopefuls chat, because these are your hopeful parents. So I was in the middle of everything. I was doing it remotely online, and since I live away from where Moon Jaden was, the hospital, it took a while for me to visit her. And what happened was, so for example, I visited her on a Tuesday. She died the next day. So it's yeah, I know. You know, I felt like it told me something again. And I mean, it was my first time to be involved in such an advocacy, and this, which is very serious, as a matter of fact. I mean, we're talking about kids below the age of 2, who are barely, who are barely alive. The medicine that they use, that's my definition of drug. The reason why their kids are not having seizures is because they're heavily drugged. You can see their eyes, they don't respond. And as a mom, it was heartbreaking, because like I said, my only frustration is when you know, there are a lot of times they don't get along with their kids. It's part of everyday frustration as a parent. But seeing them watch their kids fight for their lives on a daily basis, and with their doctors, like having them try different dose, different set of medicine. Like, it's always like that. You add another one, you take away this medicine. It's just that, and you see how drugged the kids are, and the only thing the parents want.
A friend of mine, Dr. Todd McCarea, who's really a pioneering physician for medical marijuana, who passed away years ago, he called pharmaceuticals the monomolecular mercantile madness, and it's often just about the money. How when did their daughter pass away, Moon Jaden? When did she pass away? What?
2013.
Okay,
This was
first
still
year that you became active.
Yeah.
Was she ever able to access medicinal cannabis?
What happened there was, eventually someone went to them and offer them oil, but her body was too weak and too frail. We were talking back then. We didn't know how to administer, because she can't take it orally anymore. She was on tube, and then eventually we found out that we can use a suppository to administer it. Again, this is new knowledge for me again. I mean, what? You can smoke it, you can eat it, you can put it on your skin, and you can shove it up your ass as medicine. So anyway, that everything was new to me. This is a learning process. Like, since I got involved, since I published her story on Facebook, it's always me researching. I got heavily into it, because it seems like there's something that I probably can help with in my own little ways. And it was that Facebook page and that series of campaigns, it gave birth to the advocacy. But unfortunately, like I said, so she died, but her death was very significant. It gave birth to the movement. It felt like she was our sacrificial lamb. Without her story, so the media picked up her death. The media picked up because, like I said, she was featured before because of her severe seizures. The media picked up again the story because again, this was at the time the medical marijuana was a completely new idea to the Philippines, and with CNN and Charlotte, when Micah and June, Moon Jaden's parents, heard about it, so they asked their doctors about it, and they were laughed at. You know, you see your child suffering, and you're gonna ask for something, probably an alternative to what they're doing there in the hospital, but they were laughed at. So Moon Jaden died, and June, her dad, he said that he's gonna fight he's gonna talk about it. He's gonna talk about what happened to them, because otherwise the death of her daughter would not make a significant factor to it. So that's the time when all of a sudden we heard from the Department of Health that there was actually a provision to access medical marijuana, apparently. But it hasn't been done before. Yeah, the provision is there for importing unregistered products in the Philippines, but it hasn't been done before with anything cannabis. When Moon Jaden died, so the media picked up the story because of the CNN thing. Like I said, what happened in Colorado, something was also happening in the Philippines. So when media picked up the story of Moon Jaden, that's when we found out that there was this compassionate special permit that should have been given to them for them to import cannabis-based FDA-approved medicine elsewhere, which, I mean, we only had Charlotte, what's that? The Stanley Brothers Charlotte's Web.
Yeah, they're extract.
The formula at that time.
Yeah.
So
Stanley Brothers are the ones who really introduced Charlotte to Sanjay Gupta, and then they profited quite well in terms of producing their extracts. I first met them in Uruguay in 2013 at the first Expo Cannabis in Uruguay.
I see. So that was the time that we first heard that there was an option, but then that option was very not compassionate. It doesn't live up to its name, because aside from the fact of it being expensive, no one knew that it was possible to do that.
Yeah.
So we had the Department of Health back then telling us, oh, you should have asked for this permit and so and so. They made it sound like they should have known what to do, but as a matter of fact, even the doctors didn't know. They were laughed at, remember?
No one had done it before, so how would they know?
I know, but you know, these are government officials. Like, yeah, we know that. We know what we're doing. So anyway, that's where the story broke out. I mean, it went viral. The fact that, oh, so all of a sudden there's the CSP, the Compassionate Special Permit, that no one ever heard of. So the conversation that the media picked up on was around that, and so I got invited to. All of a sudden, I got invitation to like TV interviews and whatnot, and after my first interview, I got a lot of people congratulating me, and you know, it's like, hey, congratulations for standing up, for being the voice and everything. And back then, it didn't occur to me of what I did, but and then I realized what I did was I was actually the first. I'm not sure if I was, but that story of Moon Jaden is the first time that the media took cannabis seriously.
Yeah.
And I was
it's a dangerous drug, but now.
True, and it's not a cultural thing. It's not about people smoking. It's not about that. It's not about reggae, and it's not about cultural stuff. So it was really the death of Moon Jaden that gave birth to the advocacy. And that's when we started talking to, like, all of a sudden I found myself in the middle of everything. I remember all I did was I was just facilitating everything online. And then there was a need to come out and meet everyone. And I also take pride in being one of the organizers of the first potluck in 2013. So the potluck was, it's like a celebration. So it's a celebration of life and hope, because we were going to transition to another name back then. And it was also a way of you know, it's different when you talk online, but it's different if you meet in person. So, and I take pride in organizing that event wherein it was the first time that the recreational community, the adult use, the cultural, the happy side of cannabis, and then the serious side of cannabis. So that was the first time that you gather both of them, and so I really take pride in that. Looking back, I mean, this happened in 2013. And I still remember I didn't have money back then, but I have three friends who helped me organize this. And we weren't sick, we weren't patients or anything. So we were into this for the culture, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So we don't have any money. So what we did was like, okay, when we get there, let's just ask for donations so we can pay for everything. And it was like a grand eyeball of some sort of, you know, first time people gather outside Facebook. And when people started coming in, on one side you see the patients, the parents. They were with their kids. You know, we have someone on wheelchair, and we have a patient with hydrocephalus. So she has water in her head. So that was on one side, and on the other side started coming people wearing band shirts, wearing dreadlocks, and you know, tattoos and everything. So it was like an awakening on both sides, because on one side, and you can see them, you can see both side of the participants in the event. You could see that everyone was kind of not sure what was going to happen, because it was the first time it happened that
It's kind of
you
scary,
gathered.
isn't it?
It is, as a matter of fact. And before that event, I kept on reminding everyone, please, if you wanna, I mean, smoke at home. Don't do it there. I mean, let's make it clean that this is the first time we're gonna do it. So let's make sure that we don't want to get anyone in trouble. So there's that. But yeah, it was I don't know, I don't know if it's awkward is the right word, but you know, there's like you're scared of what's gonna happen, but at the same time you're excited because hey, what's happening? And you see in the faces of the conservative families how they initially were shocked at how the other participants looked like, because like I said, they're your typical, they don't have any vice. They're just they're you know they're your family oriented, you know, that kind,
Yeah.
without any vice and everything.
Against the countercultural cannabis
Exactly.
community,
Yeah.
cannabis advocates.
Yeah, on one side, these people don't understand why people are using it. Like, they're the ones who need it, and they don't understand why are these people using it when they're not sick, something like that. And then on the other side, on the culture side, for the first time they saw, like, in one venue, in one event, they were with patients. And you know, and the best part of the advocacy was when they started interacting with each other. It was, you know, it's, I don't know, now I'm starting to look back at what happened. Like, that was something. And I take pride in being there and being one of the main organizers. And that gave birth to the community.
You should. Thank you.
Thank you
So
too.
this is 13, and so
Still
I know
2013.
we're moving along in time in terms of the show link. So you started in 2013, and it became a bigger and bigger organization. There are two different organizations. You want to tell our audience about those?
Sure. But before that, I'd like to share what happened,
Please.
because of that, what happened was, all of a sudden I have advocates contacting me, volunteering, whatever, and then there was this. Going back, how we ended the celebration of life and hope. That was also kind of like a set off party, because the next day, it was going to be our first live interview with the Department of Health. So it was a big break for all of us. So that was kind of like an encouragement party of some sort. And the finale of the event was, so we let go of white balloons, as a symbolic, I don't know, something to leave an impact to the people.
Sure.
And everyone was telling me that they felt really different when they saw, like, they felt hopeful. They really felt that it was a beginning of something. So anyway, so going back, so the next day, I wasn't originally gonna be on the panel because we wanted to have a mother of a patient talk to the Department of Health with a friend of mine, who all of a sudden we said, oh, we need to look professional. Why don't you be our director? Let's just pretend that we were organized, because like I said, we were just we started as a Facebook page. We didn't, it wasn't expected to be like you're an organization or whatever. So anyway, so that's when the talks about the CSP got more mainstream. So people are now wondering, okay, if there's CSP, then how come blah blah blah. So that was that. And then media picked up the story, so there was some momentum. And then there was an advocate who said that, hey, look, I called all of the politicians or big names who got featured in the news article saying something positive about cannabis. And out of everyone, he did cold calls. Back then, 2013, cold calls still existed. So what he did was he called a lot of people, and it was this representative from the north, from Isabela, a province up north. Out of all of the people he contacted, it was only Congressman Albano the third of region 2, I think, who answered. And he said that I want to meet these parents. I want to meet you guys. I want to see what I can do for you. So immediately the next day, he called for a small group meeting, and with me were the first few parents that I met. And so that became a series of, I didn't expect to be always in Congress talking to lawmakers and everything. So he asked us to help him organize a policy forum on medical cannabis. And this was the first medical cannabis policy forum in the Philippines. And this is still in 2013. So we're still in 2013. But that was the first time a lawmaker actually drafted a bill to have medical cannabis access. And because of that need, because of Moon Jaden's death, so it resulted to that. So that was the first time in Philippine history that there was a bill for medical cannabis access. And from there, from managing a Facebook page, I was frequently in Congress, lobbying and everything. And we started with one bill. So that was, so I take pride in being one of the pioneers in the medical cannabis advocacy. And I started really conservative, really not mentioning anything beyond medical, because we really wanted to focus on the medical aspect and the patients. So the advocacy started pretty conservative. And then the war on drugs came when President Duterte came in 2016. Then, I mean, yeah, given that cannabis is a drug, but then during his campaign, he said that he believed in medical cannabis, and in verbatim, what he said was, I will not deprive the Filipino people of the benefits of medical marijuana. That was during his campaign. And then when he took office, and all of a sudden, boom, war on drugs. And then we saw on the news, like, people are dead on the street, wrapped in garbage.
So basically, when Duarte came to power, he authorized the police to kill drug users and
anyone involved in drugs.
It was, they would come in the middle of the night and take them away and kill them in the streets and murder them and leave their bodies there. And
the narrative is
who are doing
and the narrative is and the narrative is that police always say that they fought back and they had to kill for self-defense. That was always the narrative. And then the same kind of pistol was the same kind of pistol is always around the same similar case. You see a dead body with a pistol, and then this person fought back, and so they were shot by the police.
You know, it happens all over. You know, the drug war leads to crime. It doesn't solve social problems. It causes social problems. You know, we've just got a few minutes left now.
Oh,
Me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're about out of time. We'll have to have you back and talk about this some more in the future. Give us
Sure.
this, if someone is interested in reaching your organizations today, how would they
Mhm.
go about doing that? What's do you reach out through Facebook? Do you have email or
We do have so a little story about Sensible Philippines. So Sensible Philippines came out as a frustration to the approach to the medical only approach because yeah, so the war on drugs came. We can't keep silent. We can't just focus on the medical aspect because cannabis users are also in danger, and we see it. And you kind of feel that the person is a friend of a friend of a friend who gets caught. So it's kind of like that. And again, out of frustration, last year we gathered advocates and we decided why don't we run as a political party in next year's election. So that was a bold attempt for us, but unfortunately we were disqualified for some reason. But that doesn't mean that we're going to stop. I mean, we weren't a political party for the past 8 years. I'm going on my 9th year. And being and organizing a political party and attempting to run for a seat in Congress, that was the boldest move ever. And what I love about the advocacy is it started out with a conservative approach, and then we got bigger, and then we have doctors, we have lawyers. So it was really that potluck that happened in 2013 and a series of events that led to where we are now. And yeah, so we started with just one medical cannabis bill back in 2014 or 2015. And right now, currently, we have 5 pending bills in Congress. So imagine that progress. It's slow progress, but that's monumental.
social
Uh,
political change often takes a long time to build up, and then eventually things start to seem like they're happening more quickly. So again, we're
yeah.
about out of time now, but I've been talking to Kimmi del Prado in the Philippines with Sensible Philippines and the Medical Cannabis Party of the Philippines. So is there an email address or web address that you would like our viewers, if they want to help or be involved, to go to?
Okay. Well, mostly we use Facebook, so you can find us over at Sensible Philippines Facebook and the Medical Cannabis Party. And like I said, even if we didn't get qualified to run in next year's election, it made us stronger. And eventually, we would want to be that group or that sector who would influence politics. I mean, we're sick and tired of having politicians use us and sell us hope. I got that from you. They keep selling us hope, but they don't deliver.
No.
So it was our attempt to choose to get involved in politics. But since we didn't get qualified, we're just gonna try again. But nothing's gonna stop us. We're still gonna
Great.
continue. And like I said earlier, what you've been doing when you started there, we're just starting here in the Philippines, and I take pride in being part of it.
Well, I'm proud to know you now, Kimmi. Thank you for coming on the show, and
Thank you.
I hope to get together in person someday at an event there in the Philippines to
Let's
try
work
to
on that.
advance our political movement there as well. If I can help in any way, just reach out. Thank you, Kimmi,
True. Thank you.
and
Thank you so much.
restore hemp.